Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. Late night television. Late night TV has become a staple in American media, and it's where a lot of us get our news, our celebrity interviews, our music, etc. The origins of late night start in 1949 with the Faye Emerson Show.
And I think he's right. I think you men are silly to go around with those heavy old coats and ties and shirts in the hot summer. You know, it's even more difficult for people who work in television under the hot lights and in the studios. And I have a gentleman here from television, a friend of mine, who's going to show you his solution to the problem. As a matter of fact, he is practically television. This is Steve Allen. Steve, say hello to your friends.
Hello to your friends.
She wasn't just the first woman to host a late night program, she was the first person to do so. And before my research, I had no idea who she was. She's often glossed over in this history, like many women who would come after her. And in 1952, NBC creates a 2-hour morning program called Today.
Today.
You know the Today Show. It's wildly popular. It's one of the most watched programs on television, and it was a revolutionary idea for NBC at the time. And instead of getting one company to sponsor the whole program, they could get different companies to sponsor parts of the program, which gave us commercials. But NBC has the thought, what's the audience potential between 11:30 to 1 a.m.? At this time, late night TV wasn't really a thing. There was daytime television and radio shows, but there wasn't really anything past 11 o'clock. And in 1954, NBC creates Tonight. Get it? Tonight and Today. It's cute. Who do they have to host this program? Steve Allen.
From New York City, the National Broadcasting Company presents Tonight, starring Steve Allen. With Edie Gourmet, Steve Lawrence, Pat Marshall, Andy Williams, the music of Skitch Henderson. Tonight's special guests, Wally Cox, Bill Kenny of Ink Spots fame, and New York's greatest giant, Willie Mays. Just off the crossroads of the world, Times Square is NBC's Hudson Theater. That's where we're taking you now, tonight and every night. Now to meet the star of our show, Steve Allen. Boy, we've been making last-minute changes around
I just want to highlight the bit that they just did with his glasses and how the camera is unfocused, but then he puts on his glasses and then it focuses. I think that's objectively really funny, especially since that clip is from the 1950s. Steve Allen came from a background in radio, and this kind of set up the whole structure for the program. The whole show was comedy, sketches, musical performances, stand-up, really the whole format of what we know, and no script. It was just a schedule, just 90 minutes of that guy ad-libbing. And it was really popular, but daytime TV was still making the most money. So NBC moved Steve Allen to daytime to go against Ed Sullivan on CBS. And the Steve Allen Show premiered on 1956 on NBC. Ernie Kovacs took over hosting after Steve Allen, but only ended up doing it for a few months before NBC canceled the show and put in America After Dark. It premiered in 1957 and was extremely unsuccessful. It was a news program like Today was, but it just wasn't really getting an audience. And NBC puts back in The Tonight Show. Tonight, starring Jack Paar, premiered in 1957 on NBC. He came from a background in radio and television and had previously been hosting The Morning Show on CBS. He made it a talk show. The whole show was a conversation. And he created the idea of bringing a politician on the show as a campaign stop.
I would like you now to give a real tonight welcome to Senator from Massachusetts, Mr. John Kennedy.
At first, the show was called Tonight with Jack Parr, but in 1959, they changed it to the Jack Parr Show, or the Jack Parr Tonight Show, which is how we now refer to it as The Tonight Show. In 1960, he walked off his show saying famously, "There must be a better way of making a living than this." I can't explain to you how wild this is. He walked off on live television. He quit, basically giving a big F you to NBC. So the context behind this is he made a joke that NBC removed without telling him, and he got, I guess, mad enough that he quit live on air. And it took about a month for him, just, I don't know, off on his own, for NBC to come and convince him to come back. And he came back.
I believe my last words were that there must be a better way of making a living than this. Well, I have looked.
He left the show in 1962. NBC wanted Johnny Carson to host The Tonight Show. He was hosting a game show on ABC at the time, so NBC had to wait for his contract to end before they could get him. And in this transitional period, they had Merv Griffin fill in, and he got great ratings. NBC didn't want to lose these two guys. So what did they do? They gave Merv Griffin his own daytime show. Where did they give him the show? The same studio Johnny Carson would premiere. And not only, the Merv Griffin show premiered in the same studio, in the same set that Johnny Carson would premiere the same day. This is a long line of NBC really screwing over their hosts. I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea to have these same guys share the same set and premiere day. In any case, Johnny Carson was fine. Obviously, it's Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson is now known as the king of late night television, and was probably what your grandparents were watching back in the day.
From New York, The Tonight Show, starring Johnny Carson.
He made the show very neutral. He didn't share any of his political opinions, and that gave him the advantage of having everyone. He had young viewers, old viewers, both political parties, both genders. Everyone could really enjoy the show because he wasn't talking about anything controversial. Other networks started making their own late night programs to compete with NBC. They brought Joey Bishop on ABC, they brought Merv Griffin on CBS, and they later replaced Joey Bishop with Dick Cavett. And Dick Cavett had what Johnny Carson didn't: politics.
Now, wait a minute. I'll take you half
We got
seriously
over 4
on
million
this, but I
people.
won't.
We got over 4 million people in Georgia that of my friends, and I call admirers, and you calling them all bigots.
No, I'm not.
Now you apologize to them.
No, I won't.
All right.
Oh, no, don't. Please. No.
You better apologize to them people.
Sit down. I'll explain it. Let me see.
I'll answer his question when you apologize to people.
Let me
for
see if I
calling
can
friends of
focus
mine
in on
bigots.
this. If, in fact, I have
I
called...
got friends that are black and white and admirers, and they're none of them bigots.
May I now answer?
Yes, sir.
If I called any of your admirers bigots, who are not bigots, I apologize.
Dick Cavett was doing shows about the Watergate hearings and made such an impact in the public eye that he appeared on the Nixon tape 26 times. There's a really good documentary about this. It's called Dick Cavett's Watergate. I really suggest it. It's a really interesting kind of look into this time period. In 1968, so premiered of what we now know as PBS.
Live and in color from New York City.
But the show just didn't have the same funding and press that all these other programs did, so the show eventually got canceled. There's also a documentary about soul that you should watch. Now, why am I giving you documentaries to watch when I'm supposed to be telling you the history? Because I'm a 17-year-old and the production value of these documentaries is way better than what you're watching. In the early 70s, NBC on Saturdays showed reruns of Johnny Carson's show. And Johnny eventually got tired of doing 5 shows a week. So they moved the reruns to Monday so he can have the day off. And there was this empty slot on Saturdays now. Saturdays? On NBC? What could that mean? SNL was created.
Live from New York, it's Saturday night!
NBC Saturday Night.
And I'm not going to get into SNL. It's its own kind of category, but it is important in noting because of the people who will come out of SNL. Carson was now hosting 3 times a week. One day was the reruns, one day he had a guest host. And the guest host day is important for later. Johnny Carson had a lot of comedians on his show doing stand-up, and he had this guy named David Letterman do his show.
You know, the one thing I'll never, well, this happens to everybody, that the kind of thing I'll always remember as long as I live, growing up in Indiana, is when Dad used to tease me with the power tools. How many of you, did you have that? What a guy.
What a guy. Sense of humor.
Yeah. I'll never. Yeah,
Johnny Carson became a huge fan of David Letterman, and the next time Carson renewed his contract with NBC, he made it so that he could control the show following The Tonight Show. Originally, Tom Schneider was hosting a show at that time, but he removed him and put in David Letterman. So in 1982, Late Night with David Letterman premieres on NBC. The show is rebellious and disruptive, and it's very popular with young people, kind of creating a new show for a new generation. Talking about other comedians that Carson had on the show, he had this comedian that came on 4 times, and by the 4th time, people were like, this guy's not funny. This guy's not it. David Letterman had this guy on, and he was really good with David Letterman, and he got popular enough that he went back on Carson and got popular. Who was this man? This man was Jay Leno.
Please welcome Jay Leno. Nice to have you here, as always.
Now, I don't like Jay Leno, and we're going to get into why later. Anyways, the regular guest host on Carson's show was Joan Rivers. She was extremely popular, and she eventually got her own show on Fox that premiered in 1986.
Live from Fox Television Center in Hollywood, it's The Late Show starring Joan Rivers.
And Rivers and Carson's relationship was ruined by this. He thought that he was betrayed by her when she moved to Fox. So anyone that went on her show was no longer welcome at The Tonight Show. How petty men can be. After Joan Rivers leaves The Tonight Show, Jay Leno becomes permanent guest host. The Arsenio Hall Show is premiered in 1989 on syndication.
In the heart of Hollywood, California, in these United States, on the planet we call Earth, it's the Arsenio Hall Show, starring Arsenio Hall.
Arsenio was extremely popular, on some nights even beating The Tonight Show in viewers, and he was having guests on his show no other show was having. He was young, he was funny, he was, the first black late night host white America had ever seen, and he was just a huge deal at this time. He was extremely popular, but I don't hear his name thrown around too often. It's just another example of people of color, queer people, and women being left out of late night's history. Johnny Carson announces he will be leaving The Tonight Show. And people think it's going to be Dave Letterman taking over. That's the kind of natural successor. And it turns out Jay Leno signed a secret deal with NBC guaranteeing him The Tonight Show after Johnny Carson left.
So why don't I just start off with a question here? Just how pissed off are you? I've never asked that question in many years.
Johnny, let me give you a little piece of advice. You keep using language like that, and you're going to find yourself out of a job.
Johnny Carson has his last show after 30 years on NBC. The Tonight Show with Jay Leno premieres in 1992 on NBC and was not well received.
Jay Leno starts Monday on NBC. First week, it's Billy Crystal, Tom Cruise, Sigourney Weaver, Mel Gibson, and more.
On Monday, we will unveil the all-new 1992 and a half Tonight Show model. New music, new set, new guests, and much, much more.
At this point, Letterman starts getting offers from other networks, and NBC doesn't want him to go. So they offer him The Tonight Show after a year and a half after Jay's contract is over. Because Jay's show isn't going good, so they're like, I guess we made the wrong choice. Letterman calls Johnny Carson, and he asks, should I take this offer? Should I go to a different network? Johnny says, no. If I was treated the way you're being treated by NBC, I would go to CBS.
Anton!
The Late Show with David Letterman premieres in 1993 on CBS. And for the first time in late night television, The Tonight Show is no longer number one. And NBC has to fill this gap left by Letterman. So Lorne Michaels suggests a writer at SNL, and Late Night with Conan O'Brien premieres in 1993 on NBC.
How you doing, Miss O'Brien? Big night tonight, huh? Oh, yeah. A lot of pressure. So they say. Hey, good luck. Thanks a lot.
Oh, good luck. A lot of pressure.
I'll do my best. Hey. You better be as good as Letterman. I'll give it a shot.
Conan is immediately popular and kind of becomes a David Letterman in the sense that he's very popular with younger people and is the late night host for a new generation. You'll see where I'm going with this, but in the 90s, Hugh Grant was arrested in a part of this huge controversy with a prostitute, and kind of all eyes are on him. See what he's gonna say. And he goes on Jay Leno's show.
Let me start with question number one. What the hell were you thinking?
And this show is highly watched, and Jay Leno ends up being number one in late night again. The Late Late Show premieres in 1995 on CBS, hosted by Tom Schneider, who, if you remember, was hosting on NBC before Dave Letterman. The Daily Show premieres in 1996 on Comedy Central, hosted by Craig Kilborn. Tom Schneider leaves The Late Late Show, and Craig Kilborn is hired to replace him. Jon Stewart is hired to host The Daily Show, who was previously a host on MTV. In 2001, 9/11 happens and stops late night. There's an uncertainty of when late night's going to come back, if it ever can come back, and eventually the hosts do. I think Jon Stewart's post 9/11 monologue is a really good example of how Americans' relationships with late night hosts really started to shift. Showing like such a human side of them makes people trust their late night hosts more than their own elected officials. Jimmy Kimmel Live premieres in 2003 on Fox. He came from The Man Show. Jimmy Kimmel Live was very unsuccessful the first few years, didn't appeal to women at all, and it had a hard time getting guests on the show.
Talk show without guests. Well, it looks like I might find out.
See if Jimmy actually gets any guests on the premiere of Jimmy Kimmel Live, ABC Super Bowl Sunday.
Craig Ferguson takes over The Late Late Show in 2005. I love Craig Ferguson. I think he's so funny and so ahead of his time. Just watch this clip out of context.
El Paso in Texas. Oh, El Paso. Down in that West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl.
A Mexican dog? What'd you say?
Yeah. His name was Diabetes.
Dear Diabetes.
There. Dear Craig, Jeff, and Secretariat.
Out in the West Texas town of El Paso, I fell in love with a Mexican girl.
The Colbert Report premieres in 2008 on Comedy Central, hosted by Stephen Colbert. Jimmy Kimmel Live releases I'm Matt Damon, and it becomes the first viral late night clip. And Jimmy Kimmel Live starts getting guests. They start getting celebrities on that show because of that video.
I'm Matt Damon.
She's Matt Damon.
I'm sorry, but it's I'm Matt Damon.
From November 5th, 2007 to February 12th, 2008, writers go on strike. For the first few months, late night is just doing reruns, and then The Colbert Report, The Daily Show with Jon Stewart, Late Night with Conan O'Brien, and The Tonight Show with Jay Leno all return to air without their writers. And let's just take a look at what the kind of content was at that time.
You okay? It's great.
Someone's a kiss, someone's a kick you. There's nothing that you couldn't slip through. Or at least that's the impression I get. 'Cause you're somebody aware and she's not aware yet, but she's yours. She'll be seeing you.
Did we settle our dispute? I don't know. Depends on how long the strike goes.
Basically, late night needs writers. It was a different story over at CBS. David Letterman owned a production company that ran his show and Craig Ferguson's show, and that company reached an agreement with the Writers Guild, and they were able to go back on air with the writers. At this point, Conan starts getting offers from other networks, and NBC really wants to keep him, so they offer Conan The Tonight Show after 5 years. And 5 years is up, and Jay Leno is still wildly popular. So now NBC wants to keep Conan, and they want to keep Jay Leno. And NBC doesn't have a history of screwing over their hosts, so what could possibly go wrong? Conan takes over The Tonight Show in 2009.
Build set, write jokes, get dressed, brush teeth, check, move to LA. Move to LA.
Jimmy Fallon takes over late night, and Conan gets about 3 months on air before they give Jay Leno a primetime show at 10 and becomes Conan's lead-in again. Leno's show does not go well and is canceled after only 4 months. So what does NBC do? Do they let Jay Leno go after this failed show? No, they don't. They want to move Jay Leno back to 11:30, which is where he was when he was hosting The Tonight Show, and they want to move Conan back to 12 o'clock. Conan says publicly, no, he won't do it at a later time, and NBC lets him go. Jay Leno returns to The Tonight Show in 2010, and Conan is banned from doing any hosting on television for the next 8 months.
Conan, I think you'll find our terms
very attractive. I think we have a deal.
Conan premieres in 2010 on TBS. Jay Leno finally ends his run on The Tonight Show in 2014, and Jimmy Fallon takes over. Another SNL alum is hired for Late Night when Seth Meyers takes over in 2014. Seth was... I'm just so flustered about Seth Meyers. Seth was a writer and Weekend Update alum at SNL, and you can really tell he's a writer when you watch his show. He has a lot of segments with them. He does his monologue behind a desk, exactly like he did at SNL, and it's a good example of changing the show to fit him. Last Week Tonight with John Oliver premieres in 2014 on HBO. He came from The Daily Show as a correspondent.
Next week, we'll be taking a look at this coming week, which by then will be last week, which we will see on Sunday, on Last Week Tonight.
That's the title of the show.
That's quite a mouthful.
People have responded quite well to it, so anyway.
Last Week Tonight with John Oliver.
Craig Ferguson leaves The Late Late Show in 2014. He followed Letterman for about 10 years, and they hired James Corden to replace him. And The Late Show with David Letterman airs its final episode in 2015 on CBS.
You're not going to put this on CBS, I'm sure.
Stephen Colbert takes over The Late Show in 2015, and for the first time, he's playing himself rather than a character he was playing at Comedy Central. And Jon Stewart leaves The Daily Show in 2015, where he was replaced by Trevor Noah. Over at CBS, Stephen's show isn't going that well, and they're talking of switching him and James Corden. But it's 2016. It's an election year now, and what Stephen Colbert does best is politics.
Reversed his world's largest tax cut and raised taxes when revenues did not match the expectations. So it's a matter of compromising. Will you be willing to compromise with the other side?
Stephen Colbert starts commenting on the presidential election and is wildly successful at this time. Jimmy Fallon has Trump on his show where he ruffles his hair. Jimmy Fallon ruffling Trump's hair sparked an entire controversy, and his ratings started to slide. Patriot with Hassan Minhaj premiered in 2018 on Netflix, as did My Next Guest Needs No Introduction with David Letterman. And in 2020, late night TV shuts down. Having late night during COVID forced the shows to evolve. The shows had to be done from home and without an audience and without a crew. Late night became kind of a source of facts about the pandemic because it wasn't coming from the White House. And once the pandemic ends, late night hosts return to their studios.
So my advice to anyone watching right now, and it's not easy to do. It is not easy to do. It's not easy to do, but try and do what you love with people you love. And if you can manage that, it's the definition of heaven on earth. I swear to God, it really is. So good night. Thank you very much.
And after almost 28 years, Conan ends his time on late night television. Conan still does his podcast, and he is going to have a show on HBO, which I'll be watching, so he hasn't really stepped out of the spotlight completely. Trevor Noah leaves The Daily Show in 2022, and the show is hosted by guest hosts. James Corden leaves The Late Late Show in 2023, and the show is canceled after 30 years on air. From May 2nd to September 27, 2023, the Writers Guild of America goes on strike and once again shuts down late night. Strike Force 5 podcast is created, hosted by Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, and John Oliver.
One more time, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Fallon.
I'm Stephen Colbert.
I'm Jimmy Kimmel. I thought when you said Jimmy, you meant me, Jimmy, but you meant Jimmy.
I always mean you.
But when you say Seth Meyers, who do you mean?
I mean John Oliver.
It's the five of us together for maybe an hour a day.
Strike Force 5 is the name of our podcast. Subscribe to it now.
Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts. But Spotify, you
I love this podcast. Some people hate it. I think it's really funny. A couple things have happened just in the past couple weeks. Taylor Tomlinson is hosting a show on CBS, and it seems to be more of a game show. I haven't seen it yet. It just premiered. And Jon Stewart's coming back to The Daily Show. The Daily Show still has not hired a host. John's coming back as a producer and will be hosting on Mondays. I think The Daily Show needs a permanent host, but I'm excited to see what John does, especially in an election year. And that's pretty much it. That's late night TV. There are quite a few late night hosts who just don't get the same recognition as others, and I wasn't able to mention them in this video, but I at least wanted to highlight them now. They include Wanda Sykes, Chelsea Handler, Daisu Samaro, Andy Cohen, Amber Ruffin, and Lily Singh. Hi, this is Melody from editing. I just realized that I never filmed an outro for this video, so I'm doing it now. This was originally a school project, and it took a lot of time for me to do this, but it was really fun. I'm glad I did it. I don't know if I'll ever do something like this again, but if I do, I'll do it on this channel. Hey, thanks for watching, too. It's a long video you just sat through, so I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.